Ja ga si stojam 2 sata.
It's easy to build walls. Anyone can do it. Just stick the objects, stones, bricks, cubes, chain links, on top of each other in a row, as high as desired. Walls offer security. They protect you from the bad things on the outside. The price paid for security is freedom for themselves. In order to remain safe from the outside, you must stay on the inside, entrapped by fear disguised as security. Segregating structures built to keep people or things apart. And with each wall goes more freedom. These are the things from which walls are built. Bridges, on the other hand, are not that easy. Connective structures. They bring people and things together. They unite. They require specific high-level skill sets. Geometry, physics, design, geology, construction. They require planning, scouting, favorable conditions, and strong collaboration. It takes courage to build a bridge. The courage to face the unknown and the potential businesses. Opportunity is the payoff. Bridges build openness and transparency, and this is the fertile ground upon which progress is owned. We built our bridge. We used mighty pillars on which it rests upon. The Ordered Framework Agreement, the Agreement on Friendship, Good Neighborliness, and Cooperation, and the Prespa Agreement. Instead of a history of dead ends and fences, we'd like to build a future of bridges, open roads, and chances. This is our bridge to a common future. Prespa Forum Dialogue.
Ovde ne, nisam. Ovde. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's my pleasure to, an honor, of course, to announce and moderate such an important panel, prestigious panel, dedicated to the agreement that carries the name of my Prespa. The place from where I came yesterday here in Ohrid, and where this forum should have been held. Unfortunately, Prespa, as a 3 point, has been hostage for decades to deteriorated and sometimes tense relations between the countries that share the waters of this beautiful lake. The forum called Prespa is held in Ohrid today because until the 90s, the Prespa region was a war zone where the armies of Yugoslavia, Greece, and Albania crossed their swords, making the local civilians undesirable, and the place inapt for building appropriate infrastructure to welcome such important guests. However, on Saturday, I had a wonderful day. It was just a celebration of signing of Prespa agreement 3 years later. I had a wonderful day because I was at the party attended by the artists from Greece, North Macedonia, and Albania. A party held on the beach where I, as a child, and all the civilians were forbidden to go. Today, that place becomes a platform from which young people from all over the region connect in a completely different political context that generates new energy necessary for the progress of the whole region. And it is the Prespa agreement that made this possible. My dream from the childhood became reality. So it's clear that what a pleasure is to be on a panel together with the architect of this agreement, as well with those who skillfully and wholeheartedly supported the process. So, respected Prime Minister Zoran Zaev, the floor is yours. But before I have just a short question. It's about friendship and politics. Is it possible, because we understand that you and Mr. Tsipras, through the process of Prespa, you become friends. So could you tell us a little bit more about the friendship in politics? Some say it's a real friendship, the others say it's interest. So few words about the friendship in politics.
I'll talk in English. Thank you.
Politics.
Just a moment, please.
Јас навистина
I am aware of all these stereotypes saying that there are no real friendships, that in politics there are no real friendships but only interests. However, in order to arrive at such an important solution such as the Prespa agreement, you need genuine friendship. So two issues are raised here. What if not friendship when you care genuinely about the partner with whom you negotiate, taking into consideration how your partner will explain the possible solution before his own public. On the other hand, your partner in negotiation also exerts due care how you will explain the offered solution to your public and institutions. It is friendship when you invest yourself in resolving issues that have created a wall between the two countries. And you have the feeling that you are living or creating better future for the generations to come, overcoming long year obstacle. So stereotypes are not the rule, and when you break certain stereotypes, very positive energy is released, nurturing the friendship and partnership between nations with the innate sense for helping and supporting each other. And people who can come in such agreements have friendships that will last that will last a lifetime. Now, if you allow me, I will officially open the Prespa Forum. I should like to welcome all guests, dear friends, colleagues, dear Alexis, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the media, citizens following us on media outlets. It is a great honor to welcome you here after 3 years since the conclusion of the Prespa agreement. 3 years since placing a signature that established a turning point in the Macedonian-Greek relations and opened the Euro-Atlantic integration of North Macedonia. I'm happy that we have among us some of the key important people who had a decisive contribution to reaching this agreement. It is indeed a pleasant feeling to have such number of friends that were voiced supporters of all our endeavors. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for believing in us, and helping us find a solution, even at times when many said all alternatives have been and possibilities have been exhausted. Today, North Macedonia is an equal partner of the most powerful alliance in the world. We did show that changes are possible. We have transformed ourselves from a captured state into a success story. We have transformed our country of no freedom or limited freedom of the media while consolidating the democracy. And today, I am proud that the Prespa Forum dialogue helps us create new democratic values. From today's perspective, I can freely say that the solution of the 3-decade-long difference with Greece, we applied a methodology which has not been known which was not known that far, and we started resolving problems. The difference between Greece and the then Republic of Macedonia was a precedent and necessitated finding a solution that was not known in the political relations. An innovative solution was needed, thinking outside the box. And we did come to a solution when everybody claimed that this is not possible. We put an end to a difference, to years of differences that raised a wall that prevented the development of friendly relations between two neighbors. We offered a new image of the Balkans to the world, European Balkans that has the capacities to be free, connected, equally valuable part of the modern progressive world. At times of great global turmoils, we deliver solutions and we produce peace. We create hope. So, as a leader, you cannot wish for anything more to leave behind you. I have had the honor of publishing many good news. One of them was that a solution was found between Greece and North Macedonia. On the 17th of June, together with Alexis, we announced good news for our two countries. I saw tears on faces of many Macedonians and Greece. We witnessed the emotions both of politicians and other people. Today we know it was all worth it. We have completed our ID at the United Nations. Today we have excellent relations with Greece and seriously improved bilateral cooperation. Today we are partners and allies. Our business relations are growing, and there are already decisions for joint construction of gas pipelines, electric power plants, etc. This is our way of contributing to strengthening the regional regional stability and enhancing the regional development. As neighbors, we are obliged to maintain the peace and cooperate and create conditions for better life of all. In order to reach such an agreement, we needed trust and confidence that problems can be resolved and a clear vision, but we also needed persistence. The agreement was aimed at overcoming the mistrust and the past and build a shared future, joint future. Dear friends, the Balkans have always been a region with especially intensive dynamic, and the international public has never had the luxury of closing their eyes or losing their interest in the Balkans. However, our agreement has set different tones in the Balkans. The agreement put an end to an era and opened a new chapter, both in the relations between the two countries, but also for the region. When you have constructive goodwill cooperation, peace naturally comes. The world accepted that even from the Balkans there could be a success story and a model of resolving issues that can be applied elsewhere as well. It is possible to find a solution when there is will. I and Alexis were fully aware that we are risking our political careers. The political careers are not a sum of political decisions that are used to build up your portfolio from one elections to the others. We chose to leave behind us lasting solutions for our citizens and for our societies, and not only for us personally and for our political parties. This is the approach to be applied towards ongoing and future challenges. These are Europe becoming leaders. What would Europe today say if there were no leaders that undertook such visionary steps? And today we're enjoying the benefits of that vision. The Balkan can and delivers. The Balkan is Europe. Today, based on our experiences on the way to Prespa and the agreement with Greece, we can freely say, and rightfully say, that we are Europe more than ever now. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Zaev. So now let me turn towards your friend, Mr. Tsipras. Mr. Tsipras, the process of Prespa was followed by many controversies, rumors that, like, who is behind the process? Berlin, Brussels, Washington. So I would like to ask you, who are the real owners of this process?
First of all, I should like to thank my friend Zoran Zaev for his invitation to be here today at the first forum of the Prespa Forum Dialogue, 3 years after the huge steps that we made together, a huge step that we made not only to resolve a huge problem between two countries, but also a step that sent out an enormous message to all other countries in the Balkans. 3 years before, we continued together. Zoran, I can remember I stole your necktie that day. I have it and I keep it in my drawer for 3 years as one of my most important memories of a brave and courageous step, but also of a stable friendship between us two. I wish to thank the organizers for this important initiative and to answer the question that you posted to me. I feel that it is very interesting, and I wish to answer it not only by looking towards the past, but also towards the future. The first reason for which we arrived at this agreement was that it was the result of a struggle of progressive political forces, of progressive political politicians who believed that differences between countries can and should be resolved by finding jointly acceptable solutions and in a peaceful way, which means based on international law. To us, the solution is not dispute, is not war, conflicts, or cold wars. Neither military relations that are based on cold ties, seeing as if you leave a conflict frozen for a long time, then ice starts to melt only with conflicts. This is what we are seeing in many countries across the world, and it takes place continuously. And this is the difference between progressive politicians and nationalist politicians who built as huge walls as possible between nations. But this is the difference, if you wish, between conservative politicians as well, who place and erect walls as they are. They leave them as they are in the same place. Perhaps sometimes they color them in different colors, paint them in different colors, and open doors for economy and trade, but they never try to tear those walls down together with their neighbors, seeing as they are afraid that sometimes that wall could be toppled and will destroy their political careers. We, as progressive politicians, are aware and know how hard it is to tear walls down, but it becomes that much easier if you know how to build bridges with your neighbor. This is what we achieved to do together with Zoran, with Nikola Dimitrov, with Nikos Kodzias. And this is a huge achievement for global peace and stability. The first thing is that because we are progressive politicians, and the second reason for us arriving at this agreement is the fact that we never felt, and I'm answering directly to the questions you posted to me I'm talking about the moderator, we never mentioned that this problem can be resolved by someone other. If they could do it, they would have done it years ago. We had a very warm support by the United Nations and by Mr. Matthew Nimitz, by the international community, by the European Union, and by the United States. But we never asked the political will and search for political will in some other countries or at some other places to come up with a solution. I only wanted to remind you where we are at. In 2016 and 17, the European Union decided to freeze its enlargement towards the Balkans and was not changing its position. Even when in our region there was the largest migrant crisis, refugee crisis raging after World War II, and when countries were turned one against another in resolving that problem. The European Union, unfortunately, was not changing its position, even when there was a political and ethnic crisis in the Western Balkans countries, and third powers were actually strengthening their influence, and European influence was gradually reducing in the region. We were the ones that managed to convince the European Union to once again look at the Western Balkans and unfreeze these processes across the Balkan countries, and we, as progressive politicians, took to the task to find a good solution. We said that we would not accept for the Balkan countries to return to a state of conflict and nationalism. But unfortunately, we are now seeing that in spite of these enormous efforts, we are once again stagnating. I'm comparing this to the European Union and the state of affairs in the European Union. The European perspective of Albania is also stagnating. And this is why I should like to send out a message today to our friend Bulgaria, to our friendly country Bulgaria, and to encourage Bulgaria to make this large step and huge leap I know very well how difficult it is to find solutions and exits from sensitive questions, but it is necessary for Bulgaria to make this difficult step together with North Macedonia, and for a visit to be conducted so that the process could be once again opened. It is necessary for Bulgaria to send out a message that it is part of the Balkans indeed, from the future of the Balkans, that we need to build it together and not one against another. And once again, I should like to send out another message that we need to find a joint solution to the Kosovo issue, which will be based on international law and would be far removed from nationalism. I wish to send out this message to the Kosovo Prime Minister, Mr. Kurti, who is a progressive politician, to continue the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade with the support of all of us. Only through essential dialogue and cooperation we would be able to protect the interests of our peoples, of our nations. And this is, of course, the message for my friend Alexander Vucic. It is the same message to him. One of the reasons for this is the deficiencies existing within the European Union. It is not enough for the European Union to seek out new methods and methodologies, but it should advance its position based on international law, seeing as it will find itself in a position of deficiency within its neighborhood, of a lack of power within its neighborhood. So this is the answer to the question of who made the agreement. And I already mentioned listed the two important reasons for this agreement being realized: because we are progressive politicians and because we believed in our possibilities. The third reason, as funny as it sounds, has to do with our age. I and Zoran were in power in our countries at the ripe age of 40 only. So we are not only interested in today, of course, we are not interested at all in the past, but we are interested in the future, where our next generations, our children will live. The main key and third reason for this is that we arrived at the agreements because we look towards the future. Because it does not only relate to differences and reasons separating us, but to the foundations that are placed for a future based on friendship and cooperation. We would not have arrived here if we hadn't looked forward and looked only behind us. The people of North Macedonia, dear friends, dear lady friends, original steps were made in this respect and to this end, and I'm perhaps aware that what's happening now is quite difficult for you to digest, but what's important now is for us not to lose hope and not to lose trust among us. The implementation of the Prespa agreement should continue consistently, especially when in the naming of public institutions and the amendments to textbooks. The only way forward is to continue building the confidence amongst us, and of course this is the road forward so that the integration of North Macedonia could continue in the future. And this is the best possible answer to all those who are today enemies to this agreement, and this also relates to the nationalist powers who did not believe in this agreement and did not believe that we could arrive at such a solution. This also refers to all those who seeked out opportunities to hinder us and who did not believe in everything that we built, that we managed to build to this date. We should not give them free of charge services, and we should not use the agreement for temporary benefits. I believe that we should avoid tigers or hawks. We should not leave secondary questions to prolong the implementation of the agreement, and this is why it is hugely important for Greece as a true factor of stability to monitor more intensively and continue the implementation of the agreement by taking crucial steps, and to host this year the second Supreme Cooperation Council, so that many new secondary agreements could come to the fore and could be realized, to verify the two memoranda and the agreement that is still pending, and of course to continue negotiating on trademarks. We are going through a very important period here in the Balkans. As we are going out of the pandemic crisis, there will be steps that will be returning us back, but we should not allow that. As it was proven in history, the future of Europe depends on the future of the Balkans. So that the fight that we need to continue doing is a fight for cooperation and perspectives that the Prespa agreement opened up for us, which is a very important struggle that we need to continue, and I'm sure that we'll continue to do together. With these thoughts, I'd like to thank you for your invitation and to say that I'm very grateful for being here today, and also to express my strong confidence that the agreement is indeed an example for other countries, other nations, not only in the Balkans, but also across the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsipras. As a journalist with 30 years experience, if I search through my archive, I guess one name that will pop up is that of Mr. Nimitz, the most wanted and most trusted person by the journalists who closely followed the long-term process. Mr. Nimitz, we are all miss you. You're online. We all miss you being here with us, but however, it's a great pleasure to have you with us online from New York. We understood from Mr. Tsipras that the owners of this process are Mr. Tsipras himself and Mr. Zaev. But I would like to ask you how important for you, for your efforts, was the involvement of the US and EU and European Union diplomacy, and of course the prospect of European integration processes.
Thank you very much, moderator, and apologize for not being in Ohrid personally. I'd like to talk, as you say, about the Prespa agreement and some of the aspects of it today and tomorrow. First, we should recognize that Prespa resolved a unique dispute between two neighbors, but its broader significance, as Mr. Tsipras points out, is that it demonstrates what national leaders can do when they have positive thinking and have goodwill and the desire to finalize agreements with neighbors. And leaders in Southeast Europe today should view Prespa as a motivating example of what is possible. Let me say a word about implementation. Those of us who negotiated this agreement, we understood that implementation would take time and real determination and hard work. Changing the official name of the state of the United Nations took one day. Changing thousands of documents, nomenclature, signage, insignias, sports uniforms, this is the work of many people over time. And to maintain trust and legitimacy, I think it's very important that the parties continue to implement the agreement in good faith, with speed, determination, and attention to detail. But there also needs to be an understanding that this is a difficult and sensitive process that takes a certain amount of time. To my mind, implementation has, on the whole, been much more successful than many of us would have predicted. Let me look at the big picture after 3 years. On the whole, the Prespa Agreement enjoys legitimacy and wide acceptance. It's a positive example to neighboring states, not only in the Balkans, but throughout Europe and the world, that solutions to long-standing problems are possible. It's a driving force for active cooperation between Greece and North Macedonia. Nobody lost through this agreement, and I believe each party gained both a strategic partner and generated a greater sense of security for the region. Now, although Prespa, I think, was a success, we have to face the fact that there are many stress points in Southeast Europe at the present time. This is a region of small and vulnerable states in a globalized world. That the world overall exhibits an increasing level of tension and substantial risks. The Balkan region for thousands of years was dominated and fought over by large and powerful states and empires, from ancient Macedonians and Romans to the great powers of the modern era. And given globalism, for the first time, far-off powerful states like China also have an ability to play a role in this region. To my mind, the critical challenge for the Balkan states is this: how can these small and somewhat vulnerable independent states navigate successfully in an age of globalism that is dominated not only by great powers and ambitious regional powers, but also impacted by questionable non-state actors and global corporations like Google and Huawei and Pfizer, with their tremendous influence and importance. So let me suggest two priorities for leaders in the region. First, and most appropriate in the context of this forum, is putting greater efforts on solving regional problems. Let me suggest we all take a moment to let our minds focus on a map of the region. Most of us know this map by heart. If I close my eyes, I can still see the region. In terms of geography, it does not change. That is the most important data point for thinkers about foreign policy, especially the Balkans. Nations are stuck where they are, adjacent to their present neighbors. That's why your first priority has to be to resolve regional problems yourselves, not waiting for them to get worse or for outsiders to come in and exploit them. The Prespa Agreement is an example of what is possible between neighbors who face geographic reality. In Athens and Skopje, thoughtful people came to this conclusion, that if one is going to live alongside a neighbor forever, then why not place the highest priority on creating a positive relationship? This is a conception that others in the region need to take to heart. An example is the present difference between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. It cries out for resolution based on this fundamental principle, namely that harmony in the neighborhood is a value of the highest importance. In my experience, disputes over territory are ultimately settled by drawing a boundary line. Disputes over economics are ultimately settled with tariffs and economic adjustments. But disputes over matters of identity and history, they are more difficult to resolve because of their very amorphous nature. So what is needed first is to establish a calm and positive atmosphere, and second, to pursue a respectful dialogue within an accepted process to find formulations that satisfy both sides without stepping over red lines. I emphasize a respectful dialogue because listening to one's protagonist with respect and an open mind is necessary to find possibilities for agreement. Only with the active involvement and goodwill at the highest level can these types of disputes be put to rest, as we know from Prespa, and remain at rest over future decades. In the context of not only finding solutions to regional disputes like that between Bulgaria and North Macedonia, the assistance of outsiders are often helpful. And the European Union is an obvious example of a supportive interlocutor that has an important role in the region. My own country, the United States, has long been a constructive friend and cares greatly about security and economic growth in Southeast Europe. But I would make this important point. Settlements of differences in this region will be stronger and longer lasting if they are accomplished largely by the parties themselves, talking face to face, rather than relying excessively on the involvement of outsiders. This is a point that Mr. Tsipras made few minutes ago. The success of Prespa, to me, was due mainly to the fact that the two neighbors at the highest level worked out their differences directly. So my first priority is resolving regional problems yourself, and not waiting for outsiders to attempt to settle them for you or possibly exploit them to your detriment. My second priority is recognizing that small countries cannot go it alone in this fast-moving and troubled world. This is true everywhere, but particularly so in the Balkans. To be successful, small states need to integrate into the global community. And for all its risks and complexities, the optimal solution for the countries of the Western Balkans, in my view, continues to be total integration into the European Union and the North Atlantic community. This is an unfinished process, and unfortunately it has slowed down. I am convinced that history will not be kind to those who are failing to complete the process of EU enlargement throughout this important part of the European continent. As realists, however, we have to recognize that present geopolitical realities have created some unfortunate obstacles in this process. Given the slowdown, efforts are being made to promote various forms of regional integration within the Western Balkans. To the extent these initiatives are consistent with the larger process directed at full EU integration, I think they should be encouraged. But if these regional initiatives are a subtle mechanism for delaying or avoiding the EU enlargement process, then I'm afraid they may turn out to be an unfortunate diversion. Over the long term, I firmly believe there is no alternative to pursuing the goal of full integration of Southeast Europe into the European Union and the North Atlantic European security system. Finally, recognizing that the process of European integration to Southeast Europe has slowed down, I urge national leaders to take advantage of this downtime to redouble their efforts to resolve regional disputes bilaterally, and also to pursue vigorously critical domestic priorities, and thus demonstrate their commitment to best practices on a global level. These domestic priorities, in my view, must include strengthening public administration, rooting out corruption, and upgrading substantially the level of education throughout Southeast Europe. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nimetin. Thank you, Mr. Nimetin. Please stay with us because you are the star of this evening, and we'll discover to our guest why on the end of this panel. North Macedonia is a colorful country rich in many cultures, confessions, and languages. That's how it was defined with the Ohrid Agreement signed back in 2001. The colorful puzzle is nice, but sensitive and not always easy to be handled. So, Mr. Ahmeti, you were an important part of Prespa process also. Could you tell us how challenging this process was for inter-ethnic relations in North Macedonia?
I would like to welcome all our friends. I welcome all friends of our country. Next to me is Ambassador Riker. There was a moment that was greatly impressive for me. Ambassador Riker had an exceptional engagement in this country to close this problem, with a view to closing this issue. But we At that time, we didn't manage to crown our efforts with success. Mr. Rieker was appointed to another position, Deputy Secretary, came back to the United States, and there was, but we agreed to meet again, but the fact is that I don't like traveling by plane. And Mr. Rieker told me, Ali, I have told all high officials, listen to him carefully because he must have great problems if he took the plane to come to the USA. So at that time, our country was threatened from the Middle East. Our country was divided. We had part of the population demanding progress of the country and becoming part of the Euro-Atlantic structures in order to have a better future. And this made me gather my strength and forget that I don't feel comfortable traveling by plane. And I was very well received at all meetings, and I got great support for the resolution of the problem. I also felt and saw the friendship, and I had such meetings of support with European countries. Our intention was to build peace and to ensure the peace, the future. With all efforts made by Washington, Brussels, because we have been pursuing for 20 years this problem, a solution was ultimately found. So I welcome the courageousness of Mr. Tsipras and Mr. Zaev for putting an end to this problem. Today, our country is part of the NATO alliance. Our peace and stability have been strengthened. We have improved relations with neighbors. We have improved relations between and among ethnic communities in our country. This is an exceptional achievement, historic achievement. And this is how you make history. This is how developed countries have made their history. France and Germany made history in a similar way. Was it easy for France and Germany to reconciliate? No, it wasn't easy at all. Should we pursue reconciliation in the Western Balkans and follow this example set by the Prespa agreement? Yes, of course, but that demands courage. And in order to ensure a secure future, we need statesmen with determination. You cannot go forward if you go back to flames of disagreement and disputes of the past. Maybe what would be the best solution then? Of course, reconciliation and integration of the region in the European Union and NATO. That's the only way of going forward. That's the only way of having a functional state. At my meeting with Mr. Lajczak, I asked him, let us close this black hole in the middle of Europe, because Balkans do belong to Europe. So let us close this black hole, because this black hole sucks in the entire crime from Europe. And crime does not recognize ethnic affiliation. Criminals function very well without any problems with belonging to different ethnic communities. We want to be part of Europe, and we want European standards applied in our country. Thank you.
The episode of the Prespa process happened in the Soralia. Here with us we have what are the lessons learned
A engagiove per crimine,
in this process?
Bine, ha? Dobar. Da li беше това?
Благодарам, Борян. Фалендери шум.
I agree that the assembly was the place where we had the greatest challenges following the reached agreement in Prespa. The fact that this challenge or this problem took place, it is a fact that this problem unfolded before the eyes of our own public and the public in the region. Speaking about challenges, I believe no one should forget two key importance key aspects of the work of our assembly. These are dark moments of the work of the assembly. I hope we have all learned the lesson from those events. And these events affected the democratic maturity of North Macedonia. I'm referring to the 24th of December and the 27th of April 2017, dates that we should never forget. And we should focus our hopes to the future. In order to overcome these challenges, of course, we needed reason, especially when it came to the events of the 27th of April. This situation required wise decisions and political will in order to open the room for political dialogue, and why not for reconciliation among and between political parties in order to clear the path for going forward. So the Prespa agreement was helped us to start moving and not be stagnant. So yes, those were challenging times and events. dear Prime Minister of North Macedonia, dear Minister of Foreign Affairs, ministers, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, dear citizens of North Macedonia, the Prespa Forum dialogue has been called Prespa Forum not by chance. And it's not by chance that it's held in Ohrid, because they both, Ohrid and Prespa, carry great symbolism. In Ohrid, we have consolidated our the inter-ethnic relations by signing the Ohrid Framework Agreement, which helped establish peace. In Prespa, we signed the Prespa Agreement. By that, Greece now is a supporter of our Euro-Atlantic integration. So the idea of this forum is that North Macedonia, not only declaratively, but shows that it is a factor of stability in the region, of course, with the assistance of the EU and the USA. The country found ways of closing issues that have been burdening us for a long period. This is a difference which at times seemed unsurmountable, impossible to be resolved, but the Prespa agreement is an agreement of opportunities. We stand ready for constructive dialogue with our neighbors. This agreement strengthened or consolidated the profile of our country in the United Nations. The flag of North Macedonia is hoisted in front of the headquarters of the United Nations, and we contribute to global security, and we defend democratic values of contemporary world. We can see the effects and results of the Prespa agreement, both in political and economic terms, also in terms of infrastructure and energy. I, as the president of the Assembly of North Macedonia, I can witness the improvement of the parliamentary cooperation following the agreement. The Assembly, as the legislator, has supported unconditionally the adoption of the legal framework, enabling the conclusion and the implementation of the Prespa agreement. Sovereignty and respect are the basis upon which our relations are further built, but we also promote our cooperation in the wider context as part of multilateral organizations such as the UN, the EU. The Ohrid Framework Agreement, as an efficient instrument for democratization of the country, helps preserve the inter-ethnic balance, introducing consensus in the decision-making processes. And it was shown in practice that both the Prespa Agreement and the Ohrid Framework Agreement are good examples that could be replicated, could be applied in other countries facing similar problems. They offer models to eliminate mistrust and enabling us to make a joint contribution to the further development of the region. I hope that the friendship treaty with Bulgaria will have similar effects, and I hope that Bulgaria will enable that the start by changing its position will enable the start of the first intergovernmental conference marking the start of accession negotiations. I would like to conclude that it has always been difficult for us, but if there is tolerance and will and goodwill to make compromises, when you have political courage and you do care for the future of your children and the country, then you can make these difficult decisions.
The Prespa agreement was closely followed and backed by the U.S. diplomacy. Here with us, we have somebody who is very much familiar with the past and the present of the situation in the region, Mr. Phil Ricker. Mr. Ricker, could you tell us something about the legacy of the Prespa agreement? Does Prespa have the potential to set the standards to resolve other disputes in the region?
Thank you, Borjan. It's truly a pleasure to be back here in beautiful Ohrid as we watch the sun go down among a group of such distinction, friends, colleagues. What a setting this is, as this year we observed the 20th anniversary of the Ohrid Framework Agreement and recognize that agreement as important to North Macedonia's progress and where it is today. I believe we are all keenly aware that some of the most important things, some of the things that leave the most enduring and positive impacts, are often the hardest things to do. The Prespa agreement took concerted diplomatic courage from leaders of North Macedonia and Greece, including friends here. When we reflect on its legacy, even as that legacy continues to evolve, what stands out to me and to so many Americans is that Prespa set a standard for the rest of the region, indeed for the broader world, in how to resolve peacefully outstanding conflicts through dialogue, and confirmed to us all that leaders of the Western Balkans were up to the challenge. That future-minded thinking opened the door to NATO, and the United States, I personally, was proud to welcome North Macedonia into the alliance early last year. The Prespa agreement has already brought concrete benefits to both North Macedonia and Greece, ushering North Macedonia into history's most successful alliance, reaffirming Greece's commitment to the Western Balkans, and furthering our shared goal of moving North Macedonia closer to EU membership. Building on that achievement and moving towards further European integration has not been easy, and the work here is definitely not yet complete. But it is important to recognize the role this country is playing in furthering progress, not just in this region, but more broadly in Europe and across the transatlantic community. The United States of America remains intently focused on the Western Balkans as a linchpin of our vision of a Europe whole, free, and at peace. Our new Western Balkans Sanctions Executive Order helps reinforce that goal by promoting accountability, encouraging progress toward effective and democratic governance, incorporating important regional developments such as the Prespa Agreement, and recognizing that the full integration into transatlantic institutions is what we desire and expect, and to dissuading actors who seek to undermine this progress. I'm reminded very much of what one diplomatic colleague told me once about the Balkans. It's a region that produces more history than it can consume. But indeed, history provides us context. History can't be changed, but it can help us learn and can change the future. But geography is for real, a reality. I'm very much reminded of what a United States senator said to me here in 1999. He said, "Phil, what happens here matters." That senator was Joe Biden. The Prespa Agreement has improved collaboration on energy, on defense, and on trade between Greece and North Macedonia. We are particularly pleased to see steady progress on the natural gas interconnector, which would allow North Macedonia to import natural gas from global suppliers, including from the United States. This interconnector will not only bring greater flexibility and energy security to the entire region, it will quicken the region's transition from lignite and bring it closer to meeting carbon reduction goals, clearly in line with President Biden's climate goals about raising ambition and looking for new opportunities. North Macedonia has demonstrated leadership in the defense arena. We recognize the NATO alliance faces a range of 21st century threats, including from Russia, as outlined in the NATO 2030 agenda, adopted at the NATO summit just 2 weeks ago, where President Biden sat at the same table with Prime Minister Zaev. As NATO's newest member, North Macedonia welcomed NATO allies and partners to the Krivolak training area for an impressive Decisive Strike 21 exercise in May, despite the challenges of executing such an event during a global pandemic. And North Macedonia's defense cooperation with Greece, which assists in air policing missions over North Macedonia, is a powerful symbol of how the Prespa Agreement has bolstered the entire region's stability. Agreements like Prespa, membership in NATO, and eventual membership in the EU lend the stability that foreign investors look for when considering where to invest. But beyond foreign investors, as Prime Minister Zaev likes to say, Prespa has benefited everyday citizens too. More Greek companies are investing in North Macedonia, participating in upcoming renewable energy auctions, putting forth proposals to link the country's energy markets, and investing in new manufacturing plants, all of which benefit North Macedonia in terms of job creation and knock-on benefits to consumers. As the participants here on this stage and in this audience demonstrate and attest, the international community recognizes the significant progress North Macedonia has made and the courage it has taken to achieve solutions to the challenges this country has faced. Much remains to be done, and the opening of EU accession talks is the beginning of a process that will require continued determination and commitment. We, President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, we, the United States, are confident that North Macedonia can and will do all it takes, sustaining the pace of reform, strengthening the rule of law, rooting out corruption, increasing transparency, to guarantee a peaceful and prosperous future for its people, and to anchor the stability of this region. President Biden has said many times, the United States is back, but we haven't left here. We're very much a part of this region, and please know that the United States will continue to stand by you as a partner, as an ally, and as a friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricker. We have with us online Madam Mogherini. Madam Mogherini, I understand your difficult position very much, but let me remind you that you said 3 years ago that the Prespa Agreement, quote, made all Europeans proud, and that Prespa will be inspirations for others in the region. Now, after all that has happened, what is the follow-up on your statement made 3 years ago?
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for organizing this. It's great to see you, even if only at distance. I am sure that all friends there, starting from Zoran and Alexis, know how sorry I feel I cannot be physically with you now. But it's a great emotion to see you all there, and great memories coming back again. And this is a perfect start for me to say, I would repeat that sentence again and again, not only today, but I'm sure I would say the same 2 years from now. And let me say that I remain convinced that the Prespa agreement made not only myself and all colleagues in the European Union and across the Atlantic, as we just heard, proud, but also I think was a great inspiration for the region. Why? Because as both Zoran and Alexis said, the agreement showed that, first of all, no problem is irresolvable. Every issue, every disagreement, every dispute, any of them has a solution. What is required is leadership, courage, determination, respect, which is something that is very much needed these times, I think also in the region, and the capacity, as both Zoran and Alexis mentioned, to look ahead and to worry more about the way in which you can deliver as a leader a sustainable way forward for your people and your region, rather than the next step in your electoral career. We all knew there were risks. We all knew that it was difficult. It is always difficult, but it's always possible. And I think the Prespa agreement was a great example from the region that, yes, the Balkans can deliver, and they did deliver, and that with the support of the European Union and the international community, even the most impossible things can happen. My favorite quote is Nelson Mandela's one, it always seems impossible until it's done. And it was the case in the case of the Prespa agreement. So I remain confident that the inspiration, the lesson that Prespa has given to all of us, I think, will continue to plant its seeds. At times, now I'm not in a difficult position, actually I might be in an easier position than others on that stage. At times I have regretted that not everybody is as inspired as they could have been by the steps that were courageously taken with the Prespa agreement. I think that inside the European Union sometimes we need to do a little bit more in terms of courage, determination and vision. And I am still convinced that this is a source of inspiration for other disputes and irresolved, for the moment, issues in the region, and also for relations in the region overall. But let me say another thing that I hear less and less in these times, and I am deeply convinced it is still very much in the interest of the European Union. And that is that that step that allowed, I believe, well, not only North Macedonia to enter the NATO family, but also allowed the way towards membership to the European Union to be opened. Let me mention here very clearly, and this will be no surprise for anybody that knows me a little bit, and that's many people down there, I'm still convinced that having the entire Western Balkans inside the European Union is a strategic interest of the European Union. And the sooner we do it, the better. Because the Balkans have shown that they can deliver. It is a regional interest in terms of security, in terms of economy, in terms of infrastructures, in terms of democracy and rule of law, with all the reforms package that go with that. And it is not enlargement anymore. My plea would be this: let's stop calling it enlargement. Let's start calling it unification, because this is what it's about. It's unification of the European continent, and it's for the first time after the very beginning of the European integration process, quite some decades ago, it would be for the first time new membership that would be linked to reconciliation in a post-conflict area. So it has a symbolism and it has a political value and it has a strategic and security interest that cannot be underestimated. And I really hope that inside the European Union, the same determination, courage, and vision that Alexis and Zoran showed exactly 3 years ago with the Prespa agreement will be shown also by the European leaders now. So now, in the months to come, in the years to come, but not too late, not too late. We cannot wait too much, I think. So let me wish the region all the best. Let me also say that I was very proud not only to see the European Union, the international community, the United States, the United Nations coming together, but I was extremely proud to see the region coming together to support this agreement. I will always remember the meetings we had with the six all together, where we were sharing somehow the need to create an accompanying framework at the regional level for this agreement. I believe that this could be done also for other agreements to come in the region, equally strategically important. I think the region has the potential to come together, even if from time to time it derails. But the good thing of the Balkans is that it has an inner energy and an inner wisdom that at the latest moment possible comes out and shows the world that everything is possible for the better and not for the worse. It's something that, as an Italian, I share with the region. I think we have the same DNA. And I think that the Prespa agreement will not be the last positive example that the region will offer Europe and the world. I'm confident about that. And I hope I will also be confident, be able to be confident in the wisdom of my fellow European Union friends and former colleagues, especially in some member states, to move forward with what is a strategic interest of the European Union itself, not only of the region. But thank you very much for having me, even if only at distance. Looking very much forward to seeing you, hopefully at the next edition of the forum, or even before that, if we will be able to meet soon. And I wish you all a great continuation of this forum, and congratulations for the initiative, because I think it is really extremely important. And by the way, just the last word. As director of the College of Europe now, I'll try to encourage as many students as possible to come, to mix, to mingle with their fellow colleagues of the European Union member states. Thank you very much, and have a good continuation of the evening.
Thank you, Madam Mogherini. We have with us one of the important players that made the story of Prespa successful, the Vice President of the government, Nikola Dimitrov. Mr. Dimitrov, one of the key energy booster, if I may say, for you during the process was the prospect of the start of the negotiation for EU membership. So, from this perspective, we won NATO, but an important part of the story which led to Prespa is missing, negotiations for membership. Do you think that you would have been able to put the same effort, knowing that the start of negotiation would be postponed for, and it's difficult to say, foreseeable future? By the way, I would like to ask you, because I know that you have many episodes that you remember well during the Prespa process, to share with us some anecdotes from this process which could illustrate the substance of the Prespa agreement.
Много е ризично. Благодарам на прашањето.
Thank you for your question. It's a great honor to be here, to be near the end when we have 10 panelists, and I believe that we will have a challenge with the attention and the patience of the public. On the other hand, we have an inspiring public, and when you have a politician in the audience, you're running a risk. I'm going to say what a great success the Prespa agreement was. I believe that I will start with the condolences to one of my former interlocutor from the Adamantios Vasilakis, who this year passed away. At the same time, I would like to welcome to greet my other interlocutor with whom we decided to raise the level of the negotiations, but not through special mediums. I believe that it would have been great he couldn't be here with us. I believe we would have a complete picture if we had the other signatory of the Prespa agreement. With Nikos we had different episodes, various episodes. We started, this was before the COVID pandemic, so the meeting started with the traditional hugging and kissing, three kisses for good luck, but more frequently they ended with angriness and yelling. Even the mediator Matthew Nimitz had the experience of being the subject, experiencing and seeing this attitude. Even though I had one such situation today with the leaders that enabled all of this, with Alexis and Zoran, we mentioned Sumio, where the Greek mythology is located, because why the agency is called the agency, because when the king saw that the ship is coming with black sails, and thinking that his son died, he threw himself in the sea, and that is why it's called the agency. And I told Kotis, if we don't have progress here, I believe it will be time for us to throw ourselves in the sea. He said, Nicola, beware, I'm a very good swimmer, even though I look like this. Two serious points. The answer to your question will be at the end. I believe, first I will say something that I told in Delphi, in the presence of the then Prime Minister Tsipras. I believe that what he did for Greece made Greece greater without then changing its territory, because the behavior towards your neighbors says how great a country you are. I believe that Greece gained a new alliance, and it grew in terms of its role in the region and in Europe. With the Prespa agreement, because this was not inevitable, it happened because of leadership, and it was made of leadership. The pressure from the outside would not have led to an agreement if there was no leadership. The second point on regarding your answer, the Prespa agreement for me is a rounding off of our statehood, which was in a way an unfinished story within the United Nations, when we were called the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, where we had, with resolutions of the UN Security Council, an obligation to overcome this, and this rounded off the issue of our statehood, and this is one. It enabled the NATO membership we received from our neighbors, which we considered as producers of problems. We gained friends and allies, and because we lost a generation because of this problem, waiting at the doors of the European Union, we believe that European Union will open its doors. However, it does not depend only on us. We did everything that we could, and now it's the time. Those great words that the Prespa agreement had as an inspiration for the region, as a great success of Europe, as a triumph of diplomacy, to be translated into concrete steps, because the European Union will send out a message not only to our two states, but to the entire region, whether it is worth it to invest a political capital when you rely on European promises. We heard many times, you deliver and we will deliver. So we delivered. The responsibility of the European Union to deliver, regardless of the fact that this is a complex organism of 27 member states. However, they must find a way to deliver, because it is dangerous when the words will remain empty. Thank you.
There are many conferences, forums around the region. So, as organizer, what's the added value of the Prespa Forum for that?
Thank you so much. Let me first warmly welcome you all to this event here in Ohrid. By the way, Ohrid and Struga are known as the Pearl of the Balkans, and not only because of their beauty, but because of their uniqueness and multidimensional nature that sort of reflect everything that the region entails. But there is a symbolism behind the reason why we have gathered tonight in Ohrid. It was here that 20 years ago, the historic Ohrid Framework Agreement was signed. Today, is it assessed as the most successful, internationally mediated peace agreement in the territory of ex-Yugoslavia. An agreement that set forth the frame to build the functional multi-ethnic democracy that we are so proud of today. That set new standards, but also paved the way for the two other agreements that came later. One signed also on the shores of another lake, this is the Prespa agreement, but last but not least, the friendship treaty with Bulgaria. The first one brought internal cohesion, and the two others opened new chapter of opportunities with our neighbors. I think that the three agreements are milestones of the modern democratic state of Republic of North Macedonia, the milestone of our unique and authentic story that we want to share with the world tonight. And the inspiration behind establishing this platform, which aim is to promote reconciliation, to promote political dialogue and cooperation. But also from this short historic distance, I think that the results give us the right to conclude that the three agreements are also a roadmap for the region, showing the direction how the region to achieve the strategically set goals of EU and NATO membership, but also to relieve us from the term Balkanization, which is a pejorative word for the regions, synonymous with quarrels, with discords and misunderstanding imposed as much as by geography as by the historic circumstances. I think that we as generation are proud that we are creating history itself, instead of being prisoner of history, which is a result of combined circumstances of 100 years ago. And generation which did not allow to be prisoner of fate, but to have the freedom to decide. And this is, of course, it has a price. It is costly. It requires commitment, it requires sacrifice, it requires courage, but most importantly, it requires clear vision for the future. And this is what all the Prespa Forum for Dialogue is about. In the name of these principles, we signed the three agreements out of which none, and this is important, none emerged as arrogant winner or as humiliated loser, but everyone got something worth preserving, whether it's pride or dignity, but most importantly, peace, stability, prospect for the future. And with the commitment of this statement here, but also with the indispensable support of Euro-American friends that honored us tonight with their presence, and most importantly with the support of our citizens who had confidence in our vision, we signed these three agreements that made the pillars of this new authentic story that we want to share with the world tonight. And is everyone happy? Certainly is not, and we do respect the different opinions, and we understand the different opinions, but we will not stop convincing everyone that the region needs to replace trade and hatred and misunderstanding with friendship, with reconciliation, with trust in the name of better future. And again, I would say Prespa Forum for Dialogue is all about. And someone, of course, would ask a question: if you have signed already the agreement, why there is a need to establish this platform? And my answer would be, of course, yes, you're right, it's important. The most important step is to sign the agreement, but it's not sufficient to achieve the goals. And there are several reasons for that. One is that the wounds of history have left deep scars that, of course, are difficult to heal, and not everyone is ready to trade the past that separates us with a future that unites us. And second, agreements are not perfect. And if you don't meet the side effects of the agreement, they can be source of misunderstanding and misinterpretation that can cause distress among our citizens, but also can be readily hijacked by different global actors for their gains. And third, we have established this new strategic culture where bright future takes precedence over the dark past, but we are aware of the latent trauma that in time of turbulences, irresponsible politicians, of course, can elevate them into a storm and with severe consequences. But these are only challenges, and our goal and our mission is, as I said at the beginning, to de-Balkanize the region in terms of removing the burden of this pejorative word. And I'm happy that we are doing steps in that direction. I just want to announce that last night we had the kickoff meeting of our new regional initiative, the B6 format of meeting of foreign ministers from the Western Balkan Six, an authentic initiative of the region with an aim to regularly meet ahead of important international forums, since we believe that if we are coordinated, if we speak with one voice on the areas that we have common interest, we will exert better, more influence over the processes that are important for us. And I will stop here. I would like once again to thank you for being here, to wish you a fruitful discussion, and please enjoy Ohrid, enjoy the food and hospitality of our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gerosman. Let me turn towards one and only lead we have present tonight on the panel, and but also one and only politically involved in both processes, Prespa and Ohrid. By the way, one of the initiator of this Prespa Forum for Dialogue. Madam Shekerinska, what are the similarities and what are the differences between two very important agreements?
Well, thank you, Borjan. Yes, I noticed several faces that were with us, around us, and supporting us, both during the difficult days of Ohrid and Prespa negotiations. And I have to say that it's a privilege to see you in good times, because usually you were around us in very difficult times. I have to say that the two lakes and the two agreements that carry their names have the same mission in mind. And this was the creation of a functioning multi-ethnic democracy integrated in Europe and NATO, in the European Union and NATO. And although we are marking the 20th anniversary of the Ohrid Agreement, the 30th anniversary of our independence as a nation, and the 3rd anniversary of Prespa Agreement, we have to say that a lot of our accomplishments were in the foundations of the two agreements. And I think that the two agreements have lots of similarities. First, they were so difficult, they were so unpredictable, but they were in the same time lifesaver for our country. Can you imagine, what this country looked back in 2001, when we have actually asked NATO to come and intervene in order to safeguard our stability and our unity? So can you imagine 20 years afterwards, we are a nation member of NATO, of the same alliance, because of Ohrid and because of Prespa. And to add on this, after 30 years of turbulent relationship with Greece, to have Greek airplanes air patrolling our skies, this is a major accomplishment. And I know that challenging times are ahead of us, but we need to appreciate progress to be able to recreate progress again. The second similarity between Ohrid and Prespa is that it was clearly an event that took us by surprise, and clearly no one expected a successful outcome. And this is why maybe it was easier for all the leaders to negotiate without the pressure of expectations, because the expectations were very low. It was a lonely road. Most of the people who were supporting Ohrid and Prespa were severely criticized within our public. The easy thing to do those days was to oppose the agreements, to say that they will not work, to create fear that the other side will not perform. I cannot recall the many discussions that we have had with our supporters saying, at the end of the day, the Greeks will not follow through. And I'm sure that Alexis and his team had the same. But it was a road less traveled, but I think that both Ohrid and Prespa show that the really important decisions are always taken by people who dare to take unpopular decisions. And this is probably the big lesson from both of them. There is one big difference, though, and I think several people have mentioned it. Ohrid agreement was severely international product. We have negotiated, we have contributed, there were lots of fights, but in essence, the framework, the content was very much influenced by international factors. I think the big success of this region is that Prespa agreement is really a homemade, a region-made document, and it speaks volumes of the progress that the countries and the regions have made. Nicola reminded me of Greek methodology. I have to admit that I was really, really fascinated by Greek methodology most of my childhood years. And I remember, I was, of course, I always had my favorites, and one of them was definitely the goddess of Athena. And I remember that she was seen as someone who is brave and courageous and ready to fight, but stronger than the god of war, Ares, because she was always interested in trying to find a solution first, and then if that doesn't work, go to war. And I think this was the logic, this was the emotion and the rationale that led the leaders to first try and solve the problem that was stuck and that we got so used to having. Finally, let me say that Balkan disputes and our disputes have always resembled a bit the Rubik's Cube. You think you have it. You know, you will make the blue color, and then you will go to the orange, and then on the third color, something will go wrong. We have always needed all things to be in unison. We always needed all the stars to be aligned in order for the agreement to work. We needed Greece, we needed North Macedonia, we needed internationals, both EU and the US, for the agreements to work. And this is why I do believe that we shouldn't underestimate the risks of continued implementation of Prespa, just as we couldn't underestimate the risks of implementing Ohrid. The signing is the beginning, and then the really difficult work starts. I do believe that the Prespa agreement implementation, which has been mentioned by many people, requires a European context. I remember when we were at the end of the negotiations, NATO had its issues, and there were lots of doubts about the alliance and about the future. We took a leap of faith, and we believed that it will bring us to membership. And fortunately, it worked. And we can say that this is a success that united us. But I do believe that Prespa needs Europe as well. And I have heard many times in the last 2 years especially, it is not a question of if, it is only a question of when. But if I'm honest, I'll have to say that I've grown old listening to the same sentence because the process has been going too long. And in the word of Keynes, in the long run, we're all dead, right? So the time has come. We have taken our leap of faith, and for the first time, we have delivered with a lot of leadership and a lot of enthusiasm and knowledge. And I do believe that Europe will seize its own success and will allow us to continue implementing both Ohrid and Prespa and lots of other demanding reforms by sending a powerful message to all the other countries in the region that working hard and making difficult, courageous and necessary decisions pays off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have online Mr. Lord Robertson, one of the great friends of North Macedonia and somebody who put a lot of efforts to make both story of Prespa and Ohrid successful. Lord Robertson, having in mind your long-standing experience in the international politics, do you think that if North Macedonia still isolates from European integration, it could put in danger both Ohrid and Prespa agreements?
Well, first of all, Mr. Moderator, can I thank you for the invitation? I'm really sorry that the deadly virus has prevented me from being with you in Ohrid this evening, but I hope at some point we'll be able to travel freely again, and I look forward to meeting up with so many friends in the region. Your question is an interesting one. I'm reminded, having listened to all the speeches so far, of one minister who I met coming out of a meeting, I think it was the Western European Union, and he said, George, he said, everything has been said, but not yet by everyone. And the British House of Lords equivalent of that is everything has been said, but not yet by me. So I'm going to try and avoid that trap and not go over so much of the ground that has been so well covered earlier in this evening's event. I don't think that the Ohrid Agreement and the Prespa Agreement are in any danger. Indeed, as the Minister of Defence has just said, these two agreements are quite remarkable signposts for the rest of Europe, not just for the Western Balkans, for which I worry a lot these days, but it's a signpost of how courage and calculated intervention can make a difference to what appear to be unreconcilable problems. And one of the great victories, I think, for the people of North Macedonia is in these last couple of years, they have wiped the word firearm from every map in the world. Firearm no longer exists. It didn't exist inside North Macedonia, but it existed in so many documents and on so many maps. It's now gone. And that is one of the great victories of the Prespa Agreement. And I'm so delighted that my friend Zoran Zaev and former Prime Minister Tsipras are on this stage this evening, because they showed unique political courage in taking on the forces of reaction and of nationalism in both countries in order to solve the name dispute that had eluded so many people for so long, and then opened the door for this country to move into the mainstream of Europe. That journey has not yet been completed because EU membership is there, but just slightly out of reach at the moment, but it will happen eventually. And the unification, as Mrs. Mogherini said, the unification of Europe at that point will have achieved a very significant moment. I recall quite vividly the 13th of August, 2001 in Ohrid. It had interrupted my family holiday. I endangered my marriage very considerably by having to leave our holiday home in Italy and come across for the finalization of the agreement. And sometimes making history can actually be quite ordinary. And in fact, that day was a bit of an anticlimax given the dramas and the cliff-hanging negotiations that had taken place during that momentous year for what is now North Macedonia. Javier Solana and I had spent hours, days, weeks on telephones, in meetings, on planes, trying to stop a country from careering almost inevitably towards another Balkan, very bloody civil war. So we had remarkable negotiations, multi-agency cooperation, eventually a military intervention, calculated military intervention, in order to achieve what was achieved at Ohrid on the 13th of August. But it was, again, another North Macedonian political leader who showed the way forward. Boris Tchaikovsky was not a comfortable president of his country. He represented a tiny religious minority. He was almost an accident in the post. And yet he showed a courage and a spine that confronted the forces of reaction who tried to prevent the movement towards peace and reconciliation in the country. And I spent so much time with that man that my admiration grew all of the time. His enemies called him a traitor, said he was undermining the nature of the country, said he was selling out, and yet he still stood firm. And that firmness has led to today's North Macedonia and to its people being part of NATO and part of a growing prosperity for all of its people. And I, if I can, Mr. Moderator, just take a moment to sort of give some of the names of the people who were involved at that time in 2001. Javier Solana, Mircea Joana, Alan Leroy, who is on the platform this evening, Ambassador Ife, Ambassador Biegman, Ambassador Peter Feit, Mark Leahy, who came down on my instructions to Skopje to help the president, Michel Sula in my private office, Mr. Ambassador Pardew, Ambassador Lyotard, General White Spunner, who led the intervention force that disarmed the insurgency, General Ralston, who was SACEUR at the time, and John Day, who was my chief of staff. And they interacted at that time in that incredible year with Boris Tchaikovsky, with Mrs. Elinka Matreva, the foreign minister at the time, with Defense Minister Bushkovsky, two very junior aides to the president at that time, one of them on the platform tonight, Nikola Dimitrov, and one of them, Stevo Penderovsky, the president of his country today. Mr. Jaferi and Ali Ahmeti were also remarkable players in what was a year that none of us will ever forget. Inventive diplomacy, interagency, cooperation, decisive and early involvement, all led up to the Ohrid Agreement and to the basis of a multi-ethnic democratic country as well. I don't want to take too much time. I know that you're suffering there from the heat, and sitting out listening to speeches is not a good way of cooling down the human body. But I want to finish with one anecdote, because at the end of that process, after the Ohrid Agreement had been signed, after peace had been achieved again, I went to visit the village of Tiarchi in the Tedovo Valley, a mixed village, which had been driven apart by the conflict at that time. And we arrived in a helicopter that day with television cameras, and I got out of the helicopter and was surrounded by children. We didn't know the difference between NATO and the supermarket's initials. who were wearing Juventus jumpers, wearing Manchester United strips, you know, but caught at that moment in the drama of the helicopter landing and the television cameras. And in my final speech to the North Atlantic Council, I recalled that day because I made the point that had it not been for what NATO and the European Union and the OSCE had done, if it had not been for all of these names that I listed there of people who had helped the country at that time, then these kids might not be alive. Would almost certainly, we would still be refugees in other countries. And North Macedonia would have been torn apart in the way that so many other countries had been. And we felt proud round that NATO table that day that these children were celebrating football teams that they would probably never see in person, that were in peace and in safety, were alive and not crippled, living in a mixed village in a democratically united country. And that was because of courageous people and the people of North Macedonia who themselves had given support to the president at that time and had built a model from which a lot of the rest of the Western Balkans can take a very valuable lesson. I very much appreciate being invited to speak tonight, regret that I'm not with you, and wish the country of North Macedonia and its people the very best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Robertson, and thank you to mention late President Trajkovski that we miss, I think, very much nowadays on our political scene in North Macedonia. The only representative from European Commission here with us is, I think it's a good one, is the Commissioner Hahn. A good friend of our country, but also somebody who played an important role on the road to Prespa. Mr. Commissioner, how to keep alive the leverage of the European Union if the European Union is not able to deliver their promises?
Thank you very much, and thank you for this friendly introduction. But I was well prepared coming here because it was the generosity of your president giving me a lift from Zagreb. But not only a lift, he offered me also, in order to be well prepared, a glass of whiskey, but as a real European, I put some water into it in order to be still crystal clear coming to you. But indeed, first I would like to say I'm so happy to see so many veterans from the different agreements. And if I may say, I would also include in all these agreements the prisoner agreement, because this was really homemade inside the country, and actually it was the precondition for having finally the good neighborly agreement and also Prespa, and in the future even more. So I think this country is, so to say, an example how quasi agreement by agreement you end up at heaven. It will still take some time, but in Europe, you know, we have one of these ancient saying, aspera et astra, which means at the bumpy road to heaven. And maybe this specific bumpy road has also some curves, yeah? So you not always know what is around the corner. There are always some surprises, but I think at the end of the day, we will remove all the stumbling blocks and rocks. But let me say a few words a little bit on the spirit of Prespa, because I think it's also so important for us, the Europeans. First, it's a fantastic example of how to settle a dispute. It was already said about all this leadership, but we should keep in mind also on a global scale. I'm not aware about many disputes which have been settled. And sometimes, don't be misunderstood and not see me as very cynical. Sometimes I have the feeling many conflicts which could be more or less easily resolved are not resolved because otherwise the actors would disappear and would not be, so to say, anymore at an international attention. Here there was a clear commitment to arrive, and I have to say, finally, of course it took many years, but finally it was rather fast achieved. Second, and this is very important also for the region, it was a very important signal that a fair compromise is possible. Why I'm saying this? Here, in many, many negotiations in the region, I have experienced a feeling of black and white. Either you are the winner or you are the loser. There's nothing in between. But real life, and so to say, in particular, one of the essence of democracy is to have a fair deal, to have a fair compromise which only knows winners. And this was exactly what was achieved here. And we should not underestimate the example also for the whole region. And this leads me to the, so to say, next point, the relevance for the region. I used to say there is something like a healthy jealousy in the region. So if somebody is achieving something or successful, the others would like to join. And I have sensed after the Prespa agreement, there was a push, there was a new dynamic in the region. Unfortunately, and Europe is not unguilty on this, we have lost this momentum a little bit. But what you have lost, you can find again. And this is what we will try to do, and I hope once the pandemic is over, we can really focus on what is necessary, what is important for the future. Yeah, I can understand your disappointment, sometimes desperation, but believe me, as a European official, I have very often similar feelings. And I know we Europeans are not always easy, but one has to acknowledge we are also not easy to ourselves. So in that respect, there is a, let's say, a fair treatment to everybody. But nevertheless, we always try at the end to deliver. And I think there's also something on a very serious note. Sometimes it's so to say, not seen, but we always want to create something. We want to create something positive. We want to create something sustainable, and we want to create something which is an improvement for people, because particularly here in the region, people deserve it. So we appear very often as a demandeur, different to other players in the region, which pretend to offer something, but very often after this offer there is also a demand. And I don't want to speak that much about vaccination, and we also have not always been performed perfectly, to put it mildly. But we as Europeans have never stopped exporting vaccines. We were one of the founders of COVAX, and we are delivering vaccines not only to North Macedonia and other countries. We are not attaching any political strings to it. You can criticize us, and we will not stop delivering vaccines. And this is the huge difference to others. And in that respect, I don't ask for patience. You have shown so much patience. But I wouldn't say the reason why I have accepted a certain mandate was to conclude what we have started here. But nevertheless, to a certain extent, it was a very strong motivation. And I'm also here as a real and true friend. And believe me, what we have started, we will conclude. And we don't know exactly the date, but there is no alternative. There's only a European perspective. We have to work on it. And actually, I am deeply convinced once North Macedonia is negotiating, you are very soon again what you have been already in 2005, best pupil in the class. You will very soon be again the best pupil in the class in the region, and this will trigger that kind of dynamism we need in order to achieve what Federica has said, the unification of Europe, which I always consider as the final cornerstone of what started 30 years ago with the fall of the Iron Curtain. And in that respect, be reassured, there are many, many friends in Europe which would like to see you already yesterday as a member of the European Union. We have to convince one or the other, but I think it's also time, and we have the opportunity to discuss it tomorrow. I think it's again time for politicians, for leadership, to strike a deal. To arrive at the result is not something which can be achieved by experts. Experts can give advice, but decisions have been taken by politicians. You did it 3 years ago, and you will do it also in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hahn. And the last panelist tonight is Monsieur Leroy. Monsieur Leroy, for you also, the same, like for Madame Shikerinska, the similarity and the differences between two agreements.
Thank you for the question. And first let me thank the Macedonian authorities for organizing this forum, which is very important, this forum, to make known all the huge achievements that North Macedonia has done for the last 20 years. I was there, of course, as Lord Robertson at a time where the future of the country was at stake, and so much has been achieved for the last 20 years, and not sufficiently known, I would say, in Europe, in other countries. So it's a very good occasion to make known the number of success stories of this country. And maybe you mentioned about the Ohrid agreement. I was very glad to hear this morning, this afternoon in a panel, a consensus that people were saying that clearly Ohrid Framework Agreement is a lasting success story. No one has lost with this agreement, but North Macedonia has won a lot by stability, no more threat to stability of the country. That's a huge achievement. And maybe the difference, as Ramila Shikerinska said, maybe at that time, the international community was extremely involved. I would say because the international community had the guiltiness of having not being able to prevent the other tragedy, the war in Croatia, Bosnia, Kosovo. So it was clearly the willingness of international community to be much more active at that time to prevent another tragedy. And I remind that finally, with the Ohrid agreement, less than 200 people were killed in this country due to the conflict, compared to the thousands in other war in the region. That was clear. And that's why so many important leaders from EU, US, and NATO came. And I was glad that Robertson mentioned many of them. And I would like, of course, to mention myself also, to insist on the role of President Trajkovski, late President Trajkovski. I spent hours and hours in his office, including here in the presidential house here. I can testify how dedicated he was to ensure a stable country in peace. I want very much to praise, to pay tribute to his work. He mentioned, of course, Javier Solana, obviously a very important man on this, and very, very involved. I must say, I was so proud to work for him and with him. And just one name, I would like just one name which to the list of Lord Robertson is Robert Badinter, because Robert Badinter is a former high-level French lawyer, very high level, former minister, and he invented the rule of the double majority, a rule to protect the minorities. I think it's important to remind that is still functioning today. I think his name was also important. So very glad to see this lasting success story for Ohrid. And I'd like maybe to, because I want to be short because it's quite late already, just two other points. Just on Prespa agreement, I think everything has been said, but I just want to say that when Prime Minister Zaev was received by President Macron on 10 June. I think you were there. President Macron was also, as everyone here, so congratulating the courage and leadership of you, Prime Minister Zaev, and former Prime Minister Tsipras on this issue. He was very outspoken about that, and he said it could be a model for resolving disputes in the region. I must say he repeated the same word to Prime Minister Kurti when he met him 1 week after. So that's very much, I think everyone has said it, I don't develop, but very clear. And the last point maybe I would like to make also for President Macron and the road to the EU. As Commissioner Hahn just said, we feel here a bit some disappointment of the length of the process, but as Commissioner Hahn, as a lot of us and others, I remain myself very optimistic. When we see that North Macedonia has been able to achieve so many agreements, Ohrid, Treaty of Friendship with Bulgaria, Prespa agreement, there is one last step, and I must say when I see even in the last European Council of Ministers 2 weeks ago when we see 26 member states saying very clearly they want to open the negotiation, and when President Macron said that so clearly to Prime Minister Zaev, France is keen to open the negotiation as soon as possible, and President Macron said also he will use his best efforts to ensure that there will be finding a solution with Bulgaria, probably along the line of the Portuguese presidency proposal, that when you see so many European leaders keen to ensure that this last step is overcome and that negotiation could start soon, I think we could remain optimistic, and I would not request patience as Commissioner Hahn, but will request confidence. The European Union is serious. The European member states is serious. I can testify, and I'm sure Prime Minister Zaev also, that President Macron is very serious to ensure that opening of negotiation shall start very soon. I don't have a clear date, but very soon, maybe weeks and months, that's for sure. So big confidence, EU is serious, and I'm sure, as again Commissioner Hahn said, the day the negotiation will be open, as a good friend of North Macedonia, I know that the North Macedonia will go very quick, as you did in 2004 by candidating and getting the candidate status just 1 year after. So as you said, North Macedonia has all the expertise and the competence and has shown so many competence that once negotiation will be open, I'm sure the path will go very quick for that. I'll stop here. Thank you very much again for your attention and for this panel.
Merci, Monsieur Leroy. That's the end of this panel. Thank you very much. And conclusions will be presented from Mr. Knut Fleckenstein tomorrow at the plenary session. Hope, Knut, you will find some encouraging message and the conclusions out of it. And now I would like to ask the Prime Minister Zaev to discover why Mr. Nimitz is the start of this evening. Please.
Okay. We start this year Prespa Forum Dialogue, and normally we need to keep the spirit of dialogue and diplomacy, what Balkan needed very much. And because of that, we will start this year and will be every year award for the persons who are dedicated to resolve issues, to prevent conflicts and find solutions with the problems. And normally the person who deserves to get it the first award is Ambassador Matthew Nimitz. And this is the award what, with great thankfulness, we can give it to our dearest friend, Ambassador Matthew Nimitz. Thank you very much once again for your 25 years dedication of this problem, and finally we find solution.
Oh, Prime Minister, thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't reach my hand there to take this award and put it here on my desk. I'm so sorry because of COVID. Only because of COVID, I'm not there with you. Let me just say a couple of words. I accept this award with some humility on behalf of the United Nations, which I serve, for 20 years of those 25 years. And Secretary General Guterres, who's given me so much support, but also on behalf of all the diplomats from Greece and North Macedonia and the European Union and the United States and United Nations who've helped on this project. And let me say today, a word of tribute to Ambassador Dimitris Vasilakis, the leading Greek negotiator on this for many, many, many years, who died this week in Athens. He was a great friend and a great diplomat for Greece. I regret I can't be there, as I said, only because of COVID. And I have so many memories of Ohrid. I know you're all ready for dinner, but I have to tell you, one of my visits to Ohrid back in 1995, when we were trying to work on the interim agreement, I and my colleague Herbert Okun, we set up a workroom in Ohrid, in the guest house. Your government has a very nice guest house there. And I was writing away, working on the interim agreement, and I would, when I finished a few pages, I would walk through the woods down to the president's country house. And President Glagorov was there, and he would take my papers, and he would take a big pencil, and he would write on it, and his English was not very good, but he would write big things on it and tell me what I did was not very good. He'd give it back to me. I'd walk through the woods again up to the guest house and work again. And on that visit, I wrote many, many sections of the interim agreement, and I walked many, many miles in your very nice forest there. Finally, we reached an agreement with Glagorov, but then, of course, we had to get an agreement with the Greeks. And that took a lot of time, too. It finalized in New York in September 1995 with Prime Minister Papoulias, later President Papoulias. What can I say? I just say thank you again for this award. As mediator for the United Nations for 20 years, they say it's the longest mediation for one person on one issue, which I don't consider a success. I consider that a criticism. I will say that if you looked at it objectively, what did I do? I really listened to the parties for 19 years. That's what I did. I listened to the parties for 19 years, but very respectfully. And then in the last year, maybe I did a little work. In any event, the real tributes are to other people, the European Commission, Commissioner Hahn, who played a big role, the United States, that throughout the whole process was helpful in both Athens and Skopje, and many other people who participated. But most important, the two leaders sitting up there. Leadership is important, right? We don't get these things done unless real people actually take responsibility, put their reputations on the line, and have political courage. As Mr. Robinson said, courage is not very easy. It's easy to push, we say in America, kick the ball down the road, kick the can down the road. It's hard to say, I'm going to take responsibility and get this done. I think this Prespa Forum is a wonderful idea. The fact that you're going to want to give this award every year, Mr. Prime Minister, means that the area has to solve more problems, right? Because if you want to give this out frequently, you need to solve more problems. So I urge everyone in the region, we know the list of problems. Let's get on to solving them. Thank you very much again, Mr. Prime Minister and members of your government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Nimitz. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you for attending this panel. And after 2 hours, I think we deserve some drink. Thank you.